now. Hi, and welcome. My name is Dr. John Mason. I am the founder and facilitator of Masters of the Journey. It's a community that supports people that are really want consciousness development and perhaps want to enhance and need the support for the spiritual side of themselves without having religion. It's a non-religious organization. Today, I am obviously, you can see I'm in northern New Mexico and Chaco Canyon. And the reason for that is because we have one of the most professional and experienced death educators that our country and the world has, and that is Gail Rubin, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment to you. And she is going to speak to us a little bit about the background of how important it is to be educated about the end-of-life transitions that we all must face. Just to make a point, I want to share from her website, which is agoodgoodbye.com. That's one word, agoodgoodbye.com. Gail one of her famous quotes is, "Just as talking about sex won't make you pregnant, talking about funerals and end-of-life stuff won't make you dead." Now, I've sort of stretched that a little bit because I wasn't reading part of it, but welcome, Gail, and thank you for coming on to be interviewed as a introduction to our community. How are you today?
Well, thank you, John. I'm thrilled to be with you. Good to see you. And as one funeral director said to another, good to be seen, better than being viewed.
Yeah. And along those lines, I'm dying to find out more about you and how you got into this work and how you ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Well, I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Maryland, went to the University of Maryland. I actually majored in communications and film, and right out of college, I was a TV producer at C-SPAN. And after about 5 years, transitioned into public relations for a number of decades, and really didn't think twice about death education until I got married for the second time in 2000, had a really creative Jewish Western wedding. This is after I moved to New Mexico in 1990, and I got married in 2000. So we had cowboy boots, and I wore a red dress and a fringed and beaded jacket. You might tell I like the Western wear. And everybody had such a good time. I wanted to write a book about creative life cycle events and call it Matchings, Hatchings, and Dispatchings, about weddings and births and deaths. And had the opportunity to write a column in our monthly feature in our local newspaper in Albuquerque. And it was the stories about death and funerals that got the most reader response. And it told me there's a real need to be able to take this topic out of the closet and talk about it. So I focused on funerals, and A Good Goodbye Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die was the result. I made sure that I had rights to use a Pearls Before Swine cartoon, which actually makes reference to that I don't plan to die line. And it just changed the whole course of my career. And I went from being a public relations professional to becoming a certified thanatologist and a celebrant, as you had mentioned, and have done a lot of different things to get people to consider the conversation and talk about it. And I find that using humor is a really important key to breaking down the resistance to talking about funeral planning and end-of-life issues.
You know, I just want to mention to our audience that you've written several books. There's the award-winning book, A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. You've got a book called Kicking the Bucket List, 100 Downsizing and Organizing Things to Do Before You Die. I went on your website, and you have appeared in radio and TV on ABC, PBS, Fox, NPR, CBS Radio, Gaia, I don't know what Kiplinger had to do with anything, money, I'm not sure, and the Huffington report. So, I mean, the Huffington Post. So you are now recognized, because I know that you have a busy travel schedule. You're all over the country. You're giving your presentations. Like myself, you're an award-winning Toastmaster, or I don't say Toastmistress, but you're in the Toastmasters. You're in the Speakers Association. You have got a lot of stuff going, and I again am going to encourage people to go to your website, agoodgoodbye.com, because it's amazing what Gail has done. And let's get back to the topic at hand. Why do you think people need to plan and be better prepared for their end-of-life transitions?
Well, despite great advances in medical care, humans do still have a 100% mortality rate, and yet less than 30%, in fact, even closer to 25% of us do any end-of-life planning. That means wills or trusts, advanced medical directives, and pre-need funeral planning. Now, I am not an attorney, so I don't do estate planning, but I've taken care of my planning with my husband. We've set up a trust. Even though we don't have kids, we don't have a lot of money, but we want to be prepared. We bought our burial plots because we do intend to be buried. There are people who don't know if they want to be cremated or buried. And with our tsunami of baby boomers coming up, crashing towards that far golden shore, silver and gold, we are going to have a big impact on the death industry, and things are changing. I wrote my book initially in 2010 when it came out. This is 2018. There's been a lot of changes in the past 8 years, and in fact, I'm looking to update the book. In 2016, the cremation rate in the United States surpassed 50% average. So that means a lot more people are getting cremated, but they're not talking about what they want done with the ashes. And there's a lot of different things you can do with your cremated remains. And so many people are saying, oh, I'll just leave it up to my family. Don't do that, because assuming that you're living the kind of life that people will love you and miss you when you're gone, they'll be grieving that loss, and grief clouds your thought processes. And you don't want, if you love the people in your life, you don't want to leave them wondering what would so-and-so have wanted. So spelling that out, and even if you don't know, maybe just talking about what might be a nice thing to do to celebrate your life, to dispose of your body. What do you want done? Now, there are lots of different options, and people are in all different economic situations where they don't even know how much cremation or burial costs, and they might be shocked to find out, holy cow, I can't afford this, and turning to donating their body to science to get a free cremation. But these are all elements that don't even cross your mind until somebody goes and dies. And then it's like, I don't have time to get educated about this. So I find it my mission in life to go out there and be funny about this, and to use film clips from comedies in my talks, which help people laugh. And then when you laugh, you get those endorphins in your system that can help you relax about a very stress-inducing topic. And then you can learn more.
You bring up so many good points, and so much has come to mind. I mean, you talked about cremation, which is really a hot topic, I said facetiously. and for, the time that we live in, now there's green burials and there's so many other choices. And you started in Albuquerque the Death Cafe meetings. And for those of you who don't know about Death Cafe, there's all over the world where people come together on a monthly basis or on a regular basis at any rate, and they talk about some of the options and expose you to some of the concepts that we might not have considered. It's a way of beginning the conversation. And personally, my wife passed away 6 years ago, and we knew that she had a terminal cancer situation. There was lots of time for us to talk and to plan, and she created actually a memorial service for herself, and her wishes were well known, and it was spectacular how well it all came out. But that required some pre-thought and planning. And it's not like we all want to be morbid or preoccupied with it, but if we understand the death transition and what our options are, and sometimes a little bit about the death itself, it may remove some of the unknown and the anxieties that people live with that keep them from living. Mm-hmm. And I know that your humor and the topics that you share are things that people have avoided, but it's really important to consider, not just for people who know that they have a terminal illness, but people who are preparing for a sudden loss. They're an unexpected thing. It's good to have your wishes known. Yeah. Can you share just a little bit more about maybe an example or something like that of the people that you might have worked with?
Well, it's interesting when you said about your wife and this service that you had. There is also the possibility, if somebody is on hospice, to have a living memorial service. Have people say what they love about you to your face while you're still alive. I did write about that in A Good Goodbye, one of the first living memorial services. And, Wayne Dyer, God love him, he had said life itself is a sexually transmitted terminal condition. So this is something we're all going to need to have to face, and to be able to, like with the Death Cafe, take it out of the closet and speak in open terms about any questions you have about mortality issues. I love the Death Cafe movement, which came to us from the United Kingdom in 2011, and I brought it to the United States in 2012. I was the second person in the US to have it, the first west of the Mississippi. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to be honest about it. When I had my first Death Cafe in Albuquerque, my parents attended. Both of my parents at this point are still alive, God love them. And my dad said, after we had this Death Cafe event, you need to come to the house and I'm going to show you where all of the important papers are. And I was like, thank you. This is the kind of preparation that we need to be able to have, because my parents have a pretty complicated financial life and they drop off the face of the planet. I need to be able to access those papers. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who's got those kind of situations. And this is why it's so important to honestly talk about where the papers are. Is there insurance? Have you made your plans? And in fact, my parents had bought their burial plots decades ago when my grandparents died. And a lot of people don't know that, yeah, it's great to buy a burial plot, but you're still going to have to pay a funeral home to do the funeral and get the casket and all of that. Or baby boomers, are you inclined to do a do-it-yourself kind of funeral? You can do it in most states in the United States, but a lot of people don't know about that. And that involves washing and dressing the body, transporting the body, getting the paperwork done, like a burial transit permit, and registering the death with your state registrar. So there are all these different elements that, yes, you can do it yourself, but in a lot of the talks that I give, when I mention this whole idea of doing it yourself, people's eyes get really big and they're like, why would I want to do that? But it can be very cathartic to deal with our own dead, which we have gotten out of the habit of doing over these many years. And professional funeral directors do play an important role in our society. If that is not the paperwork and the washing and dressing and all of that, if you feel like you don't want to do that, that's why they get paid what they get paid. And funeral directors, I admire them so much that they are dealing with people on the worst days of their lives. And we as individuals can make that day, which will eventually come, better for ourselves by pulling together the information, planning ahead, having conversations about it with our loved ones.
You know, you bring up a great point. If you love your parents, if you love your children, if you love your spouse or the people you're in relationship with, don't leave a mess.
Yes, yeah.
And don't have them make decisions, because families start squawking and have all kinds of issues, not only about the estate, but just the ceremonies and what's available for their loved ones. And it would be best if you could spell out exactly what you want, or know what your parents want, or tell your children precisely how you want things to happen. The guesswork, you're right, it causes problems at a time when people are in grief and not able to make good decisions. Mm-hmm. And do you find that that there are people who do not want to broach the topic? My friend Stephen Garrett, who's an educator like yourself, is specifically focusing on men because he seems to think that men are less open to having that conversation than women are. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, at the talks and the death cafes, it's at least 2/3 to 3/4 women. Men are not nearly as open to talking about these things, which I find very interesting. But I'm glad Stephen's out there doing what he's doing.
Yeah, and let's let me just say that in the future, I would love to have you come and talk about some of the more specific things. Now, our group Masters of the Journey likes to approach things from consciousness and spiritual development and things like that. But there are some real nuts and bolts things that we could also be talking about, and ways of honoring the spirit that become ways of expanding our own consciousness, and ways of inviting the experience of a life and death transition to being something which really empowers people and allows them to live with much greater awareness, consciousness, and perhaps a better focus if we eliminate some of the fears that are running in the background. Would you be willing to come back and chat with us some more in the future as time allows?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and your events page is amazing. There's a conference that you've started putting on last year that's going to happen again at the end of October, beginning of November of this year, which is 2018. Can you just mention that and tell us what's going on?
Yes, the Before I Die ABQ Festival. We last year, 2017, we did it for the first time. There's this growing trend of festivals with all sorts of activities to get people to think about, talk about, and hopefully do something about our 100% mortality rate. And this year, October 30th to November 4th in Albuquerque, and we'll also be having some events in Santa Fe as well. We'll have Death Cafe conversations. We're going to have a party in the cemetery. In Albuquerque, around Halloween, Day of the Dead, we have a huge parade and festival called the Marigold Parade, and we're going to be participating in that event. Just all kinds of different ways to step out of our comfort zone, but still be engaged and interested in all of these different activities. We also have a website for that, Before I Die, abq.com, where we'll be posting the events and keeping people updated and provide a registration. They're mostly free and low cost events. So.
Okay, and again, your website is agoodgoodbye.com. Is there any other contact information you want to give to people if they'd like to find out more about the resources that you're offering?
You know, people can email me, Gail, Gail, at agoodgoodbye.com, and I'm happy to write back. And people can even call me. 505-265-7215 is my office number.
What, would you repeat that again, please?
You bet. 505-265-7215.
This has really been fun. It's not a morbid topic. This is something that is important, and we can have, I won't say a really good time with it, but we can look. Okay, but we can begin to look at it differently and investigate what kind of plans and we have, not only for ourselves but the people around us that we care about, and we want to improve the quality of our relationships.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed about using humor when talking about death and mortality issues is that you can only really successfully use humor when death seems like a distant possibility. When you've got somebody who's terminally ill, when death is on your doorstep, it's a lot harder to laugh in the face of death. So my approach of using humor is to get us to plan ahead while there still seems like there's plenty of time.
Right.
And I encourage people to do that.
And what's that, your quote, your byline once again?
Just like talking about sex won't make you pregnant, talking about funerals and end-of-life issues won't make you dead. So let's start a conversation today.
Yes. Well, Gail, I so appreciate you coming on our interview video conference, and we're going to make this available to people, and hopefully we're going to have you back in the future, and so we can talk more about that, and maybe I can even make it down to Albuquerque this year and participate or experience this conference that you're having. I so appreciate the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And yes, thank you for being you and for all the information that you have available. And with that, this is Gail Rubin, and her website again is agoodgoodbye.com. This is Dr. John Mason with Masters of the Journey. We'll see you around in the future, and please keep looking for ways that you can be of service to all humans, to all souls that you come in contact with. We're all in this together, and if we can support one another and raise our consciousness and the consciousness of other people in any of the ways that you can do that, that's really helping us all move forward. It's a blessing to see you. See you in the future.